everyone, it's Emma here, and this week I am talking through which foods can contribute to UTIs. So I'm going to focus on some foods to look out for and why, and just run through some of the underlying processes which could potentially be contributing when it comes to UTIs and cystitis and certain food groups. So first on my list is refined carbs and sugar. The main reason being with these is they could potentially feed the bad bacteria that can contribute to UTIs and cystitis. So those kind of traditional infections where there is a traditional cases of cystitis where there is an infection at the root of the cause. So we could be feeding the specific infection quite specifically, but actually these carbs and sugars, simple sugars, could also be just generally upsetting the balance of our good bacteria in our gut. And we know that gut health and urinary tract health are so in sync, are so closely related. So different bacteria, different yeasts, if that bacteria and yeast balance throughout the gut is thrown off, then that could also put us at risk of more infections in the future. So it's not just at the time of infection, but also longer term, the impacts that gut health can have on our urinary tract. Number 2, I put many drinks, because other than water or cranberry, which we're going to talk through, there are quite a lot of drinks that can potentially contribute and be considered risk factors. So we have caffeinated drinks, that includes your coffees, your teas, your fizzy drinks. Those with artificial sweeteners, so it's not just about the sugar that we've talked about, but actually the sweeteners, alcohol as well, and then we've got fruit juice for a number of reasons in terms of the sugar content, and it can be quite acidic. And interestingly, research has shown that a lot of these drink options, so caffeine and also those containing your artificial sweeteners, so your fizzy drinks, which can have sweeteners and sugar in, but if they're marketed as low calorie, low sugar, they're not necessarily safe options because they could have those sweeteners in. There's lots of research which I can tag that shows that these drinks may be detrimental to traditional cases of cystitis, but also interstitial cystitis. So it's not just all about feeding or upsetting those bacteria, but it's about very likely to be those underlying inflammatory processes as well. A lot of these drinks are really stimulating, the sugar, the caffeine, and this is likely to add to this underlying low-grade inflammation as well. So this is just another great area to think about. When I talked about food, I often reference drinks because it's such a big area we often forget about. Next, I've got spicy foods. So this is a common one that you'll find if you search through Google. There's various points that spicy food is mentioned. Now for me, I want to just remind you that spicy foods, when they're naturally spicy foods, so all your kind of herbs and spices and chilies and things, these can be very healthy. They're very high in antioxidants and they're anti-inflammatory. They can be quite irritating, especially if you're quite sensitive. Now this is individual to a certain degree. Different people have different tolerances, so it really is about keeping in tune with your body. And compared to something like sugar or your sweeteners, spices are on the border where they are healthy, but if we're particularly sensitive, then they might not be for you. But you can think about gentler options and what you can tolerate. The same goes for my next point, which is citrus fruits. Quite often these get a bad name and can be classed as unhelpful. What I would say is to stick to the whole fruits wherever possible, with lots of lovely fibre. Citrus has lots of lovely vitamin C in there as well, which is an antioxidant, very protective, and is anti-inflammatory. But again, in high amounts or at the time of infection, citrus fruits might be slightly acidic, slightly irritating for your urinary tract. So again, just one to consider. My last point is meat. Again, not one to potentially cut out completely. It is individual, but just one to consider if you're trying to consider all options. This could have an effect in terms of the bacteria, the E. coli, which can cause acute UTI infections, but there may also be an inflammatory element with meat in terms of metabolites in the gut as well. I'm going to do a full extra blog on this possibly next week, where I can expand on that point and why plant-based foods may be more preferable in the instance of UTIs. So just to round up, just to end on a more positive note, it's not about cutting these food groups out completely, but trying to perhaps swap in some more whole foods, more fibre-rich foods. These are going to have their benefits, nutrient rich in those fresh, lovely whole foods, and go for spices and fruit that you can tolerate. In terms of the fruit, we've mentioned citrus, so cranberry and or berry options may be a much safer option. You've got the antioxidant content in there, not quite so acidic, and research has shown to be especially protective for urinary tracts. I will make mention of that in the description, a little link there as well. Then herbs in general, lovely anti-inflammatory options to include in your diet. And then a very specific herbal option for supporting your urinary tract is the Uvarsine echinacea, 2 herbal ingredients in there, which can help to relieve urinary symptoms associated with UTIs or cystitis. Fingers crossed that's helped everyone. Please, as always, do leave any comments or questions below and I'll get back to you. If you're watching on YouTube, please also do subscribe to our Avogo YouTube channel and also hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of any future videos. Thanks!